He wasn't passing that ball. That's a shot he's been practicing all summer long, even when he couldn't move.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking back at the 6 games from Wednesday. We are previewing the 6 games from Thursday and Michael Bolton's along for the ride.
Let's get to it.
That is a great idea. Let's start with the first game of the day. The Chicago Bulls found another way to blow a lead. Jim Boylen is officially... No, he's not officially, because he's already been officially. He has been knighted as Sir Shit Coach. He is the worst coach in the NBA, and it is not even remotely close. The Pacers win 115-106. I guess I'm burying the lead there because Victor Oladipo returned to action. He hit the game-tying 3 at the end of regulation, and the Pacers get the win. Let's start with the Bulls, who go down 115-106. Chris Dunn, who'd been remarkably consistent. He'd been playing well. He started out this game, had 6 points on 3 of 3 shooting, and your mate, the Thumbhead, decided to bench him after those 16 minutes. We had Chandler Hutchison going off, scoring 21 points, and that's really the reason why Dunn was limited. Hutchison played 28 minutes, a career-high 21 points, 71% shooting, and he ran with him over Dunn. Even though they needed to get stops at the end of the game when they were hemorrhaging a lead, you didn't put in your best defender and one of the best defenders in the league in Dunn. Boylen needs to go ASAP. As for Dunn, you just hold on to him. He's still got a steal, which is exactly why you roster him, and that is like 95% of his fantasy value, and he's still got 3 assists. It's just baffling why he played so few minutes, especially when you got 14 nonsense minutes out of Ryan Archer-Jacquino. Kobe White was out there jacking up shots, and we had 30 minutes of Chris Felicio. That's how things are going in Chicago. Levine had 20 points with 9 assists. Horrible shooting numbers, of course, but really strong otherwise. While Thad Young, 36 minutes, 16, 2 and 2. He's absolutely fine in a 12-team league. Luke Cornett, only 20 minutes, not his best night, while Felicio got the bulk of those minutes, and he was closing the game for the Bulls over Cornett, as you do for a bloke that literally about 2 weeks ago hadn't played a single second all season. White, only the 9 points. Should have mentioned Thomas Satoransky. He's back in the good books, apparently. 36 minutes, 11, 4 and 4 with 2 steals. Should never, ever, ever play under 30 minutes a night. But again, I'm not the coach. But it just shouldn't matter because everyone should be able to realize that he is the guy that needs those minutes. For the Pacers, let's start with Oladipo. He's going to be playing 24 minutes limit until the All-Star break and coming off the bench. He played 21 minutes here, 9, 2 and 4. So when we talked about Oladipo at the start of the year in the draft, this is sort of the worry we had. We thought he'd be back early January. It was an extra whole month, so you missed October, November, December, and January if you were taking him around that area of the... I saw him go it's like 70 in some drafts, most likely around the 100 mark. But now that he's back and he's been activated, if you decide to keep him in your injured reserve spot, which you can do in some circumstances, you can't make any other moves. And he's going to be limited to this level for the next 3 weeks or so. So it is a real handicap. So you need to activate him and have a bloke who's going to play 24 minutes. Now, Oladipo is good and maybe he can provide enough value, but he had 9 points in 21 minutes here. Yes, he was rusty. Yes, he only hit 1 3 that was the key one, the game-tying 3. But it is still a concern over these next 3 weeks how limited he is going to be. And then we'll see what they do after the All-Star break. Brogdon was back from his concussion. Didn't really score much until overtime. Ended with 15, 8, and 9. I wouldn't worry too much about the usage. It wasn't an Oladipo factor here. While Tony Warren had 25 points. As Tony Warren aligned as you can get, 25 with 4 rebounds. But he did have 2 steals. He did have 2 threes. Aaron Holiday bizarrely out of the rotation so that TJ McConnell could play. Let me rephrase that. So TJ McConnell could play poorly. 4 points in 17 minutes for McConnell there, while Dougie McDirt saw fewer minutes than Jakar Sampson. Whenever you can do that, you've always got to do that, of course, because Jakar Sampson, a bloke that literally won't even play when Miles Turner is healthy. The Dart, Goga Badadze.
Problem with my Gogo-mobile. Gogo-mobile? No, not the Dart. Not the Dart.
Not the Dart indeed. Now, Batadze played 15 minutes here, 10 and 4, and wasn't particularly good, but I highlight his line to say that he wasn't particularly good. He still had 10 and 4 and a block, which is really a solid enough fantasy line. he is going to be a top 70 player at some point in the future and maybe a top 40 player, I believe. I really, really like this guy. Sorry, I won't say he's going to be. I think he's going to be. Maybe because I could be wrong. I've been wrong on plenty of guys. Shout out to Campaign. But I do really like Badadze. There was no Miles Turner in this one, as I mentioned, while Domantas Sabonis had 15, 11, and 5. Far from his best performance of the season. There's a new podcast, though, that I would like to talk to you guys about. Imagine for a moment it's the year 2010. You leave your high-paying job at a blue-chip software company, come home and do the same thing you've done now for weeks. You go to the medicine cabinet, you grab 5 painkillers from your cancer-stricken wife's never-ending supply, crush them up into a fine powder and wash it down with a tumbler of vodka. It didn't used to be this way, and it's about to get much, much worse. This is the story of Robert B., and he tells it on the powerful new podcast, Keep Coming Back, Real Stories of Sobriety and Recovery. Each week, host Mike S. interviews and unravels stories of people who fell down and have managed to get back up again. The broker who blacked out and woke up in another state, not knowing how he got there. The college senior who tried controlling his drinking, only to wake up in a jail cell. Everyone loves a comeback story, so subscribe and listen to Keep Coming Back, Real Stories of Sobriety and Recovery. A link to the podcast can be found on the Locked On Offers page. Every time I read that readout, I've got jokes in my head, and I just don't know if it's appropriate to put them into those, to put them into that ad read. So I'm just going to keep them to myself and laugh silently as those jokes just percolate in the old brain. Let's go on to the next game. It is the Detroit Pistons and the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets get the win 125-115. Reggie Jackson, he of insane usage and efficiency, continues to roll. 26 minutes, 23 points, 5 assists, and 4 triples on 57% shooting and 67% from 3. Now, you get excited about this. Like, you look at these numbers and go, that's fine. If I hadn't ever seen Reggie Jackson play before, because he's never been able to do this, there is a lot going on here that is unsustainable. Sure, ride it out, but I don't believe that Reggie Jackson's this good of a shooter or this high of a usage player. It just doesn't make sense. And he's played plenty of times without Blake Griffin before and never been this good. But it is encouraging at the moment. It's also encouraging that the Crucifix, Christian Wood, had 20 and 8 in 21 minutes, but it was a game that the Big Avocado played. They played together, and big numbers from Wood. The 11 free throw attempts is fantastic. Got to roster him and see what happens here at the deadline. While Sekou Doumbouya, it looks like he's going to be sent back to the G League, according to Dwayne Casey. And I apologize yesterday for the Bobby Portis G League thing. It was a tweet that I saw just before I recorded that, and it was from a fake Shams Charania account. I should have double-checked that. I apologize. Portis didn't get sent to the G League, even if he should have. Doumbouya, though, is a clear drop in all leagues. It's really gone downhill for him. As for the Big Avocado, 12 and 13 with 2 steals and 2 blocks on some really rough shooting numbers, while Rose had 22, 6 and 5 as he continues his role. The sell-high window for him is going to close soon because I think he's getting traded. We don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure he will be dealt. The Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark. Only 18 minutes and Luke Kennard still to return, but if Rose is traded, or if Jackson is traded, or if both are traded, he goes back into a 30-minute role. So we've got like a week or so to go. I would hold and just wait and see what happens at that deadline. Markieff Morris could be a pickup, especially in a 14-team league with Sekou likely done. 15, 3, and 4 in 32 minutes for Markieff. Yes, it was on 78% shooting. This also opens up some minutes for the Crucifix as well at power forward if Sekou is going to get sent back down, which it does appear that he will. While Svi Mykhailiuk only the 19 minutes, while Langston Galloway played 25. The artist formerly known as Taurean Prince had 22 and 7 in 28 minutes. He hit 4 threes. He had 4 steals. He's inconsistent as shit, but when he does get it going, the numbers are pretty good. While it was great to see Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyrie Irving put up good numbers together in the same game. 25 and 5 for Kyrie, 28, 3 and 6 for Spence on 62% shooting. With DeAndre Jordan back, and he had 3 blocks himself, a nice blocks and rebound sort of stream. Jarrett Allen's minutes came back down, but he was still productive. 11 and 6 for Jarrett with 4 blocks. Remains a guy we roster. While Karis LeVert, I don't think I'm going to talk about him as a droppable guy anymore because you know it. 11 points, 22 minutes. Get his ass out of there. While Smoke and Joe Harris is only a stream guy. 9 points for Joe in those 28 minutes. Let us go on to the next game. There's going to be some repercussions from this Knicks-Memphis game. I would imagine that Lord Elfrid Payton gets suspended for a punch on at the end where he shoved Jay Crowder for shooting while they were up big. If you can't take getting shot on when you're down big, don't get down big. It should be pretty simple. Anyway, the Grizzlies smack them 127-106. Crowder, who is, of course,
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
He had a good one, 18 and 7 with 4 triples, but you cannot rely upon him for anything. While with Jaren Jackson Jr. in foul trouble, we saw Brandon Clarke play 27 minutes, and we saw him play 27 good minutes. 17 and 5, 3 steals and a block. And I tell you why this makes me turgid, is because these are the defensive numbers that made Clarke look so good coming out of college. They haven't really appeared so far in the NBA, but shit, if this happens, along with his insane efficiency, this is a top 30 bloke at some point in the next couple of years. Should be a 12-team league guy. Well, Dylan Brooks did his best. Colin Sexton, Norman Powell, Jordan Clarkson impression. 27 points, 2 rebounds, nothing else. And I would say, well, yeah, maybe you can't continue that, but he is shooting so much. His usage is high. His efficiency is up. Over the last 6 weeks, he's turned into a different player. He should be rostered, but if that falls off, then there is nothing there, and that is always the concern. Morant had 18, 3 and 10 with 2 steals, while Jonas Valanciunas 12 and 13 in 31 minutes. I don't think that Jonas is getting dealt by Memphis this season. They are rolling towards a playoff spot. Josh Jackson actually played 5 minutes. There was significant garbage time in this one. Of course, he is not a fantasy option to me. On to the New York Knickerbockers.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
I have absolutely no idea why it took us this long for Mitch Robinson to play good minutes, but he played 31. He had 10 points, he had 9 rebounds, he had 3 steals, he had 4 blocks, and he looked good. We're still mucking around with 10 minutes of Taj Gibson bullshit, of Bobby Portis jacking every shot that he can possibly come across. All that sort of bullshit was going on, but now, big minutes for Robinson. Now, it's taken a while, but the good thing I can say here about Robinson is despite the tomfoolery, he's still been a top 100 player. The top 50, could that be coming from now on? Shit, it is absolutely a possibility. Great to see it. Lord Elfrid Payton was great, but he's going to get suspended. It looks like 15, 7, and 11 with 2 steals for Payton, while Marcus Morris also ejected at the end. Don't think he's going to get a suspension, but remember from back in October, I was saying, well, this is nonsense. Like, what are we seeing here of Morris? Why was he playing 38 minutes and taking every shot under the sun? His minutes have been dropped dramatically. And again, my proclamation was I didn't think that he would be a fantasy relevant player come the fantasy playoffs. We are absolutely trending in that direction. He had 17 shots, 17 points in those 17 shots, 29% shooting. And if he doesn't get traded, I just don't think he's getting those 35 minutes a game back. Dennis Smith Jr. could be a stream option if Payton gets suspended. 8, 2, and 4. And then Frank Ntilikina didn't play. And then after the game, Mike Miller said, oh, yeah, he's got a sore groin. Has he? Well, that would be nice to have known beforehand. Did you have a sore groin last game when you didn't play him at all until the final 3 minutes? Like, what's going on with this bullshit? But yeah, Smith might be an option there. Damo Dotson had 15 points with 4 triples, taking some of that playing time away from Bullock. But when RJ Barrett returns, there's just not enough minutes for all of those guys to go around. They are only the deep league streaming option types. If you're the type of fan that knows football, knows the Super Bowl, knows basketball, knows college basketball well, so well that you could choose any game and call it, MyBookie is the place for you because they let you turn all of your sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Between the Super Bowl and NBA and all sports going on, it's time to get your ass off the sideline and in on the action with MyBookie. If you're that kind of guy that likes to bet a little to win a lot, try a parlay. For instance, if you like a couple of the big favorites this week, parlays are perfect because they let you bet multiple games together for a much bigger payout. So if you're going to bet this season, do the smart thing and go to mybookie.ag because no one gives you more ways to win. If you join right now, MyBookie will match your deposit halfway, all the way up to $1,000. That means if you deposit $2,000 dues, you get an extra $1,000 in free money to play with. Just use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA to activate that offer. Once again, the promo code is LOCKEDONNBA to take advantage of MyBookie's generous sign-up offer. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, and you get paid. All right, so on to the next game we take a look at here, the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs get a big win at home, 127-120. The Donovan Mitchell had 31 in his 34 minutes, continues his strong shooting streak. Great to see him get to the line 10 times and bang all of those in. He's shooting about 98% over the last couple of weeks from the line, while Bojan Bogdanovic was really strong, and it's good to see him getting 9 rebounds, which we don't often see. Mike Conley, 21 minutes, 12 points. Not good. If you're in a shallow league, an 8, a 10-teamer, if you're in a playoff battle, I don't think you can wait for Mike Conley to get back to being Mike Conley, if he ever gets back to being Mike Conley. It's really rough at this point. I'd consider it in a 12-team league as a drop as well, but it's almost a guarantee in a 10 and an 8-team format. Really rough. 17 and 19 for Gobert, while Ingles also has been impacted by Conley's return. 7 points in 30 minutes, again a shallow drop, and could be a 12-team league drop as we move forward. 20 points for Jordan Clarkson, a strong offensive game from him. He didn't do a huge amount else, and that's a little bit of a one out of the bag there for Clarko. Not something we really need to consider too much for our standard formats, just more of a streamer or 14 to 16 team league guy. For the Spurs, there was no LaMarcus Aldridge, so Jakob Poeltl got a start, but he got into some early foul trouble. That meant he played only the 22 minutes, but still had 4 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 block, and him getting those assists is really surprising. With Poeltl, a guy that I like long-term for Dynasty, but when Aldridge is back and there's no timetable for Aldridge to return, that could mean he's back tomorrow, could mean he's back in June. Like, we just don't know at this point. I don't think it's going to be June. But as for Poeltl, as long as he starts and plays here without Aldridge, there is value in him. The Derek White situation, oh man, what the hell is going on? 23 minutes, 10 points. Low minutes in DeJounte again, but closed the game, while Murray played 30 minutes and had 16, 3, and 4. If this sort of back and forth nonsense from White is going to continue, he's a 12-team league drop, while 38 points for DeMar with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. A lot of minutes for Marco Bellinelli, 24 of them, in fact, or Trey Lyles. He went back to being stinking. All right, now on to the last couple of games, a couple of real big blowouts here. The Kings lose to the Thunder 120 to 100. The Kings at home, that's a bad loss. Chris Paul returned, only played 26 minutes after grieving for Kobe last game. He probably still isn't quite right. 9 points on 25% shooting with 7 rebounds and 10 assists. While Schroeder had 24, 4, and 9. His sell-high window is still open as he shot 62%, and Shea had 17, 7, and 7 with a steal and 2 blocks. That is a real illustration of what Shea's upside is. He could be a 24, 7, 24, 7, and 6 player, realistically, and that's top 20 upside pretty clearly. How about your mate, Luguentz Dort?
Bort? Oh, come on, Bort?
Mommy, buy me a license plate!
No, come along, Bort.
Are you talking to me?
No, my son is also named Bort.
27 minutes for Dort, 23 points on 67% shooting. Now, he's been playing well, but this offense is completely out of nowhere. So I wouldn't read too much into it. I think there's a real chance he stays in the rotation ahead of MC Hamidou Diallo. Maybe even starts over Terrence Ferguson. He's been really, really good. He is a two-way guy. I think they might convert him, but don't read too much into that. Read into Nerlens Noel, though. 12 and 5 in 21 minutes, 4 steals and a block. He's a must-roster guy, irrespective of Adams, while Steve had just 8 and 8. Still a buy low, but he is struggling hard at the moment. And the Italian cock had 19, 4, and 4. For the Sacramento Kings, Bogdanovic, 27 minutes in the start, 23 points. This is what we were hoping we'd get when he started over Bud Hield. He should be rostered everywhere. While Hield, 13 points in 23 minutes. Now, some of the lineups that Walton was running weren't really that good, but that is 2 out of the 3 games that Hield has played where the minutes have been low. Now, to be fair to him, 2 of the 3 games he's also produced in a really, really big way. But I look more to those minutes as a worrying indicator as to what happens here with Bud. He's not a drop by any means. You could trade for him, but just be wary that those minutes have been low in 2 of those 3 games. Fox had 19 points with 5 assists here, while The Undertaker had 6 and 7. Dwayne Dedman in 23 minutes. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. Why he is rostered in as many leagues as he is ridiculous. 8 points in 26 minutes. He is not good, while Nemanja Bjelica was shitful. 0 points in 24 minutes. 5 assists, missed all 5 of his shots. He'd been rolling. I talked about him on the Sell High podcast. Looks like I jinxed the shit out of him. I wouldn't worry too much about it. With Holmes and Bagley still out, and we don't know when they're returning, he still has some of that value. I'd be pretty stunned if those guys played on Thursday. Harry Giles looked pretty good, 10 and 6 and 2 blocks, but just not enough playing time for him as we move forward, most likely. Let's move on to the last game of the night. The Houston Rockets go down to the Blazers. James Harden still doesn't look right. 125-112 was the score here. Harden had 18 points on 28% shooting. Now, he did have a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
And he had 5 rebounds and 4 assists, but 28% shooting is rough. Another bad 3-point shooting night. He has just been poor, while Westbrook has stepped it up. Hit all 6 of his free throws, 39, 10, and 6 with 2 steals. Good stuff from Russ. Ben McLemore moved to the bench and had his best game, 17 points with 5 triples, only a deep league streamer, while Austin Rivers is playing really well at the moment. 17 and 5 in 28 minutes, outplayed McLemore and outplayed Dan House. And you'll be stunned to know this, guys, but Eric Gordon, who did start over McLemore, with Harden and Westbrook back, he was terrible again. This is just what happens with this guy. Now, some of it is the poor shooting, 2 of 10, but the usage isn't there. He offers nothing in those other areas usually, although he did have 2 steals and a block, and he is not a 12-team league player. I cannot see him as that. I am shit scared of what's happening with Clint Capella. 17 minutes, I am sure that the heel is still a problem with him, and I would be pretty surprised if we don't see him missing more games in the future. 2 and 7 in those 17 minutes for Capella. He also wasn't playing very well, but that is not good from him at all. For the Blazers, Damian Lillard gets his first career triple-double, 36, 10, and 11. I guess he's a good player now, while Hassan Whiteside had 15 and 10. He also had 5 blocks, but to be fair to him, he has been much better over the last couple of months than he was to begin the season, and the numbers are obviously tasty. Trevor Ariza shot 64% and played 38 minutes, but we're rostering him for steals. Those offensive explosions are great. He's not a 64% shooter, pretty obviously. In fact, he's like a 40% shooter. So this is one of those weird-ass games where everything just went in for Ariza. If you want to have him, but this is not realistic. While Gaz Trent has clearly, to me, jumped over Anthony Simons in the rotation. 10 points in 26 minutes for Gaza with 2 threes, while Simons didn't even get to 10 minutes of action. And Mallow, I think if you're in a 10-team league, Mallow's a drop. 6 points on 18% shooting, 13 rebounds with 5 assists. After that really hot start, he has cooled off pretty significantly, so I don't think that he is a guy in a 10-teamer that you need to hold, and even in a 12-teamer, you'd have to consider Mallow. I still think he probably needs to be rostered in that sort of a format. Let's look at some injury news now. Victor Oladipo returned, and as I talked about, 24-minute limit and coming off the bench until the All-Star break. Al Horford dealing with a knee problem, while Marc Gasol has been ruled out for the next game with hamstring tightness. Serge Ibaka gets the bulk of that value in deeper leagues. You look at the Waterboy Chris Boucher as an ad, while Paul George is set to return on Thursday from his hamstring injury that has cost him the last couple of weeks of action. Let's move on to look at DFS now for Thursday's games. Okay, DraftKings pricing here. The first game we look at, the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are 3.5-point favorites, and the total is 227.5. The Wizards gave up 80 points to the Bucks on Tuesday in only 20 minutes. So that does seem like a low total, but Charlotte also has the slowest pace in the league and one of the worst offenses in the league. So this is an interesting one, definitely. Rui Hachimura and his bashed-up ballsack are still on the sideline, while Jordan McRae is out with his ankle injury. At point guard, Ish Smith's at 4,600. He is completely, maybe, but I don't really think that that's exciting as a DFS option. While Devontae Graham was sick last game, he was ruled out. He played. He shouldn't have played because he was terrible. Just 19 points in that one. He's at 7,700, and the matchup could not be tastier for Devontae. So I think, assuming he's recovered from whatever illness caused him to not play well, he should be okay as an option at 7,700. Isaiah Thomas at 4,100. That's I say it's a pretty strong no, but he's been around that 20-point mark. I still don't trust it. While Malik Monk at 47. The minutes have been strong. Last game he wasn't so good, but I think he's got some GPP value. While Terry Rozier's at 7,300. We can do better. Bradley Beal's at 9,400. He absolutely roasted last game. 61 points in that one. He's averaging 53 over the last 5. No reason to think that he's going to be any worse in this one. He drives this team's offense pretty clearly, and Cody Martin is not someone that we should care too much about. With McRae out, Troy Brown Jr. is likely to get more playing time. He's been solid enough in those last couple of games with players injured, 27 a night, and that's okay at 5,600. Probably limited upside, but not a bad cash play there for Troy. While Miles Bridges at 47, you can't trust that at all. Isaac Bonga, similarly. On to your big blokes, the tank, Tom Bryant. He's at 5,200, and finally we got good minutes from Bryant last game. Can we trust it 100%? Of course not. But you'd have to think that given what happened last game, his minutes are going to push up. The salary hasn't really adjusted that much, so I like him in a matchup that's super positive. They'll probably still start him out of position, but it was massive improvement last game. Paul Washington Jr. is at 54. Really hard to trust him. Mahinmi, Pasechniks, Bill Hernan-Gomez, Cody Zeller. Just a whole lot of stuff to not like at that position. While Davis Bertans is at 6,200. Probably about $500 or $600 too expensive in my mind. And we can do better at that power forward spot than using Bertans in it. The next game up is the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Raptors are 10-point favorites. The total is 220.5. Marc Gasol is out.
Oh, hi, Mark.
With that hamstring soreness, while the Jedi, OG Anunoby,
hello there.
He is not on the injury report after hitting his shoulder last game, so that's obviously good. Paddy McCaw is questionable. Now with Gasol out, Ibaka will start. The water boy, Chris Boucher, will move into the backup role. We'll get some minutes of Siakam at center. A little bit more playing time for the Jedi there as well, most likely. Darius Garland rested last game for Cleveland, but he should be all ready to go.
I'm not tired.
The Padawan Colin Sexton is at 6,900. Because he's been playing really well. I detailed that on the Sell High podcast earlier today. That is quite a hefty sum for the Padawan. I'm not sure I'm willing to spend 6,900
Giggity.
on him. I think we can do better. Kyle Lowry is probably a better option, 7,500. But I don't dislike Sexton here. I think there is some GPP value. Garland's really tough to trust at the moment. While Freddles Van Vliet at 7,700, no way that I'd be taking him over Lowry while spending an extra $200 in the process. Terrence Davis could get some extra minutes, but not really too much of a DFS play here. I think we have to like Kevin Porter Jr., who had 30 points in 26 minutes, and I care more about the 26 minutes in his second game back from a knee injury than I do about the 30 points. $4,000 dues is a really cheap price for Porter, so I'm in on him at that salary. You got Stormer Norman Powell, who hasn't been able to hit anything at this point. He's 6,300 is probably too high for a bloke that he's going to rely upon those shots going in. The matchup's super good for him though, and that's the only reason you could sit him in a tournament, but I wouldn't want to use him in cash. Chetty Osman at 46. If I had a fart sound effect, I'd play that one. While the Jedi OG Anunoby is at 5,000. Yeah, probably more of a better category player than a DFS player. I just don't think there's all that much excitement in using him. Kevin Love's at 7,200. I actually do like that one. The blowout risk here is a concern, because if it is a blowout and he plays 26 minutes, he won't make it. But I do think that that's not a bad price tag for him. Siakam's at 84. Okay, fine. I just don't really see great value in it. And again, some blowout risk. While Larry Nance has been killing it. He's at 5,600. He's averaging 36 over the last 5. There always seems to be in every game something happening to get him to 25 minutes. So that makes me think it is by design, whether it's a blowout and Love sees lower minutes, or Thompson gets his minutes pushed down, or Henson's minutes come down, or they all come down. They are getting Nance 25 a night, and he is producing almost every game. So I like him quite a bit in this one. Ibaka at 71, we have to be all about him. With Marc Gasol out, there's some big value there, I think, for Serge. The Muppet John Henson and the Waterboy, Chris Boucher at 43, I don't really think we need to get too excited then. While Tristan Thompson's at 5,400. A weirdly good record against Toronto, 37-point average the last 3 times. There is no Marc Gasol, who's obviously a massive center stopper in the NBA. 5,400 is okay for Tomo. I'm not totally in love with it, but I do think there is some value in using him in this matchup. The Philadelphia 76ers and the Atlanta Hawks. In Atlanta, the Sixers are 7.5-point favorites. The total is 228, but both Al Horford must be dodging his former team. He is questionable with a knee injury, while Mike Scott is also questionable. Prison Mike is dealing with knee soreness also. If both of those blokes are out, that front court is really thin. You're going to see the cock monster most likely into the rotation. Maybe we get Jonah Bolden getting into that spot as well. Some definite options that the Sixers could use, and they're going to have to push more minutes into Joel Embiid, would be my guess. At point guard, Benny Simmons is at 8,900. The first game with Embiid back didn't go exactly to plan, just 30 points in that one, his lowest score over his last 5. But prior to that, he'd been crushing it. The matchup's a good one for Simmons. Is Trae Young going to be able to stop him? I'm going to guess no. At 8,900 for Simo, I think we like it, but there is some skepticism. I don't know if Shake Milton will get another start. I would have to imagine that he will, but we just don't know that at this point. He's not a high upside guy anyway. While Young's at 9,900. Trae Young, love that price for him. Jeff Teague's at 4,000.
My name is Jeff.
Cool. Hull Neto, Brandon Goodwin. Neto went off last game, but we can't expect that to repeat. Fanapants, Kevin Huerter's at 5,300. A little bit down on that. I'm not massively into him in a tough matchup. While Furky from Turkey is at $4,000. Just not enough upside for me with Korkmaz, with the Painter getting those minutes, with Shake Milton getting those minutes there as well. Reddish is at 4,500, and he's actually putting up some pretty consistent numbers. 27 average over his last 5, which at 4,500 is plenty. So I don't think that Reddish, especially with Bruno Fernando out, I think Reddish is a pretty good play here. The Painter's at 4,400, only 13 minutes last game. With Embiid back, which is obviously somewhat of a concern, so I don't think we need to get him in there. While Hunter's at 47, and he also is giving us 25 a night plus in his last 5, which gives him value at that salary, much like Reddish. This could be a nightmare for these blokes, though, going up against this Sixers defense, so that's something to at least piss on your parade a little bit. For your big men, Johnny Collins, the Baptist, 7,800. Yep, let's go. Joel Embiid at 9,300. Also, let's go, especially if Horford is out. While Big Al Horford at 6,700. With Embiid back, it's a little bit tougher to use him. Although, he did drop in 41 against the Warriors in Embiid's first performance in a few weeks. It is a little tough to use a bloke who's got knee soreness and is now going to be pushed to a couple of rungs down the rotation order or the pecking order with Joel back. Damo Jones, maybe he gets in the rotation. I know one thing's for sure is you shouldn't care if he gets into the rotation, but that is a possibility that he gets in there. Let's move up. The next game, we're looking at the Warriors, looking at the Celtics. The spread's not there yet. They can't get to triple digits on their game tally thing. That was a bad joke. The Celtics are going to smash them. Jason Tatum is questionable if he is out, and normally you just get more minutes to Kemba, more minutes to Jalen, more minutes to Smart, but are we going to in this one? I don't think they're going to need to, so it's going to be more minutes to Shemi Ojale, more minutes to Brad Wanamaker, more minutes to Grant Williams, more minutes to those sort of blokes on the bench who aren't going to have any sort of DFS impact. At point guard, Kemba's at 7,900. The matchup is incredibly tasty, but again, there is that blowout risk. I still think that Kemba's worth a look. Alec Burks at 52. We can do better. Draymond's at 59. I don't mind that. Draymond's actually putting up some pretty good numbers at the moment, and it does slide under the radar, and him at under 6,000 is a strong price. While D'Angelo's at 8,000, I feel good about him getting 40 most of the time. He's averaging 48 in his last 5, so there is really good value there in D'Angelo Russell. At 6,200, Marcus Smart is another guy that we can have a look at if Jace Tatum is ruled out, so there would be value there in him at that salary. For your shooting guards, Brownie is at 7,400. I think that's really right on the nose. That's exactly where you want it. Good cash, maybe limited upside though. While Damian Lee, could there be a bigger fall from grace than this bloke? 12 points over the last 3. He has shit the bed officially. Time for a new mattress for Damo. I don't think we need to look at that one. For your small forwards, the triangle, Eric Pascal's at 4,400. He had 6 points in 11 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's a no. While the little dog, Glenn Robinson, at 4,800. Really, really playing well at the moment. And at that price, I don't hate it. We know he's going to get minutes. We know that. That's just going to happen every game. He's going to get 30 minutes most games. So I think that's not bad cash. Limited upside, though. While Tatum's at 76, and he could honestly drop a 45 on these guys in about 20 minutes, it feels like. So I think Tatum is worth a look if we hear that he's playing. While Gordon Hayward at 75, I'd only want to use Gordo if Tatum happens to be out. For your big men, Marquise Chris will probably start. He's at 4,500. I like it. And again, this is me and Marquise Chris, my number one Twitter punching bag over the last couple of years. He's playing much better. He's in a role where he's starting, and I've never denied that he puts up numbers. So here we go. Let's get excited about Marquise Chris. 6,100, Daniel Tice with Enes Kanter out. He's like 30 minutes, 30 points, bang, let's go. Chris isn't going to stop him. There it is. So 6,100 for Tice. I think that's a decently strong cash option. The Wizard Amari Spellman, probably not looking too interestingly at him. Let us go over the next one, the Utah Jazz, the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets, 1.5 point favorites at home, 215.5. That's a little bit of a shifty line, I think. It's weird. The Jazz are obviously in better form, but they are coming off a back-to-back. Are they adjusting for the Denver altitude back-to-back factor, which shouldn't impact the Jazz that much given they play in Utah and they've got the altitude of their own there? So maybe that's a little bit screwy, that line. We'll see exactly what ends up happening. At point guard, Mike Conley's at 4,200. I think we just got to look at it as a GPP guy. He's just sort of all over the place, or actually not all over the place. He's down the bottom. Maybe he can jump back up, but that price makes it too hard to resist. While Monty Morris has been getting good numbers the last couple, 30-plus minutes, but it's not translating into good DFS numbers, just 5,300 to his price. I'm not super into him there. The Donovan Mitchell.
He's Don. He's good.
Shooting the lights out of recent times. At 7,200, I really think that is a strong price for him. Clarkson, Beasley, they're not going to do it. While Farton Will Barton's at 6,000. Has been a little bit under the last couple of games, but I still think we can like him at that salary and definitely look at him as a GPP guy at the very worst. Bojan Bogdanovic at $6,000. He's been sort of around that 30 mark. I think there's actually a good floor for him at that salary with some upside. While Jingle and Joe Ingles at 4,900. It's not really getting me all that excited. Gaz Harris at 4,000. Nah, not really. Well, Mick Porter's at 57. He's in the low 20s in minutes. It's not enough for me to invest 5,700 in Porter and feel good about it. For your big men, Big Chungus, Nikola Jokic, 10,100. Yep, let's go. Rudy Gobert at 8,100. Also, let's go. I like both of those centers and probably the two best plays on the slate. While Jeremy Grant is up to 6,400. He has been just destroying people, averaging 37 over the last 5. So I'm pretty big on using Jeremy Grant here in this one as well. Let's go across to the last game of the day for Thursday's games, and that is the Sacramento Kings and the LA Clippers. The Beatle Paul George is likely to be back, as is Patrick Beverley. Both of those guys are probable, while Derek Walton is questionable. We don't know about Marvin Bagley or Rashawn Holmes. They were both out on Wednesday. I would assume they're both out for Thursday, but we don't know that at this point. Fox is at 7,600. I like him at that salary, while Beverley at 4,900. Now, with George coming back as well, I think that's probably not quite there for Patrick Beverley, while Lou Williams at 6,800, who's been struggling even in the absence of George. I don't think George returning is going to make things necessarily better for him. George is at 8,200. Has a history of destroying the Kings. I like that, but only for tournaments, while Bogdan Bogdanovic at 4,800 hasn't been great all the time as him as a starter, but likely to start again on Thursday, so we look at him at a 4,800 price tag, while Bud Hield's up to 68, more tournamenty as well for both Bogdan and Budrick. Landry Shamet was getting some shine with Paul George out. That'll dull pretty quickly, I would imagine, while Bazemore and Magruder aren't options for me. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. Look elsewhere. Kawhi Leonard's at 10,800. Really like what Kawhi's been doing, but of course that's without Paul George. With George back, that 10.8 price tag for Kawhi is probably just a little bit too high, and we can invest that in better ways, while Mo Harkless will likely go from 30 minutes back down to about 20 minutes. It will also impact JaMychal Green with those guys back. At center, Ivica Zubac is at 4,000. Sure. Montrezl Harrell's at 6,900, who's been playing pretty well, but the matchup here, it's been a negative over time against the Kings, but again, that's a Holmes-related factor, and he's not likely to play. Harrell at 6,900.
Giggity.
I don't think that we want to really invest with Paul George coming back as well. I don't expect Holmes or Bagley to play, which gives Bjelica some value, but his salary at 6,500 is high. But again, if those guys don't play, I think there is still some good value in Nemanja at that salary. Let's go and have a look at some FanDuel value plays. The Tank Tom Bryant looks good. Both the Kevins, Kevin Porter and Kevin Love, Kevin Herter even, in fact, has got some value. Troy Brown and Vanilla Tice, Padawan Collins Sexton, Johnny the Baptist Collins, Brad Beal, Serge Ibaka, Jaylen Brown, De'Aaron Fox, Big Chungus, Nikola Jokic. All of those guys have value over on FanDuel for Thursday's games. That'll do it for me, guys. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Leave a comment, give a thumbs up, and subscribe wherever you would be listening or watching this show, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Nate McMillan.